Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me. You are always most welcome. Thanks for coming back. Today I thought we'd start off with some nice photographs and bits of research I've been doing on some Sea Harriers from the 1982 Falklands conflict. So I thought I'd share those with you, and also it sort of spurred me on to think about the research that we do when we're going to build models. Certainly, as you can see, I've done a bit of research for the photos, but I'm going to talk more widely about other types of research, books, magazines, other reference materials, looking at other people's models, etc, really, and having a good chat about it. But first, you're all looking at me and thinking, what the hell's he done to his face now? As you probably guessed, for Christmas, one of my gifts was not one of the models, but a beard trimmer. So I've been experimenting with various types of beard style. So don't worry, it doesn't mean I'm going to be joining the BBC and doing some late night ghost stories, although I do look like somebody from a sort of Victorian M.R. James ghost story reading, perhaps. Nor am I going to be setting up a cotton mill, because I know I look a little bit like one of these industrialists from the time of the Industrial Revolution. Fear not, I'm not going to be going into heavy industry either. So, without further ado, let's just change the subject. My wife, by the way, who bought me my trimmer, she's not at all impressed by my look, so I'm quite amused to hear what you think. Anyway, yeah, by the way, she called me all sorts of names. Mutton chops is one of the names I got called, but yes, there we go. That's apparently that's the style from the era. Anyway, today then, I want to talk about different sorts of reference materials that we can get for the kits that we build and how much reference we do. Now, actually, I just put the computer away, but that was a bit of a mistake. Because I've just remembered those photos you just saw of the Sea Harriers. There are several pictures of models there. Don't know if you can see this. Zoom you in a bit. There's one modeller who's done a beautiful example that you probably saw that was on the like a diorama carrier deck. And if we just zoom back to that, I'm just going to get back in there. Here we go, and he's done it with this, it's the kinetic kit, it's the same kit that I've got, but he's done it really nicely. There's just one problem, and I suspect this is exactly why reference materials are so very important. He's made a mistake here, and I know one of our forum members, by the way, will probably spot this straight away, because he used to work for BAE. Now then, if we, don't know if we can actually get that, go to done and zoom this in. Yeah, let's zoom it in for the other camera. Look at the leading edge of this wing. There's a problem here. Now, I have to say, Kinetic's instructions, as we've discussed in the previous reviews, they are not the best. They are not good clarity. If you look at the leading edge of the wing here, on the Sea Harrier, the original FRS2, I should say, and in the GR1, the GR3, they have this stepped, there's a step, like a sawtooth here. And this is actually, this wing that you see here, this gentleman has put so much effort into his beautiful build, fantastic work has been done here, but he's used the wrong wing. That's the FA2 wing. Now I don't particularly blame him for this mistake, because in this kit there's both wings, and it's really not the clearest instructions to tell you which one to use. Now I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. I've got them right here. Here are the said sprues. So we have here the FA2 wing, but again it's one of these things about instructions. I won't bother showing you the whole thing, but you may recall, if you flick back on my review, that they show you the sprue trees with all these extra sprues and extra parts. It doesn't show you them like a lot of manufacturers like Revell, ICM, Tamiya, etc. do, with them sort of coloured out to tell you not to use them. No, there's nothing like that to stop you making this error. Now, they are numbered, so you did make a small mistake, but it's easy to miss it, and it's just very confusing when they've got two lots. So this is the one that he's actually used. I'll zoom you in so you can see exactly what I mean. Look at the leading edge on this wing. It's got this step in it, but it's a very subtle step. It's very gentle. There we go. See it there? Yeah. So it's just this little step here. Now this is definitely the later version, okay? And if we look at the correct one, which is also in the same kit, and I shall bring you in on this so you can see what I'm talking about. This is the other sprue, and on here, I'll be gentle with this because it's not that well positioned on its frame. And if I look more carefully on this one, you see that, as I suggested, it's more of a sawtooth here. So that is the correct one. That is the Sea Harrier FRS one. I went to the Falklands and also used on the GR1 and GR3 all around that time. So I think that, I think that Kinetic are culpable here for making the instructions less than super clear. You know, they have. I looked at it several times myself before I could get my head around it, and then I did ask James, our forum member, who knows about these things, and he confirmed that that is the case. So it's very easy to make a mistake and put the wrong one, and unfortunately our chap did that. Now, the point I'm really making in the whole video is this: you can't do too much research. However, I do not believe. I've made criticisms in the previous reviews where we've had some of these Far Eastern companies with, you know, instructions that leave a great deal to be desired. My repackaging is a great deal to be desired at the moment. It's not going in there at all, is it? So no, we'll have to leave that. But yeah, there's some instructions that some of these Far Eastern and Chinese manufacturers in particular that are just not very good at all, and really should be better. So not very impressive. leaves it wide open, and then I've had one or two comments where people have said, oh yeah, but you can research it on the internet. Well, that's no panacea. You know, just looking at a photograph in isolation doesn't always tell you all the information that you need to know. So that's what I want to talk about today, and have a look at I'm no paragon, I make mistakes like everybody else does. But it's interesting, I think, if you can open your mind to all different sort of types of media, different types of research, reference materials can come from all sorts of places. And I'm going to show you a variety of them that we've got here today. So, first of all, as I've got in front of me, you'll have seen my review on the lovely Wingnut Wings Raymond Collishaw Sopwith triplane some months ago, last year. I have to say that somebody was very kind at Christmas and actually got me a reference book for this. And this is a classic example of a specialist modeller's reference book. So this is not the sort of thing that you find in W.H. Smith's. Let's have a quick look at it. Here we are. So, let's put that on there. And trying to find a home for it because I'm a bit short space at the moment. I'm not going to find a home over there. Look at that. Right. We are struggling for space horribly at the moment. Let's just pop that to the side. Right, there we go. So, let's have a look at this. So this is really aimed at modellers. So it's a very detailed, specialist article. Don't forget with Wingnut Wings, you could argue that you can maybe, to a degree, manage a lot of the details because Wingnut Wings provide it so well for you. But this just adds another dimension. So, this one is by J.M. Bruce. It's one of the Windsock data file series, number 22. I won't go right through it, I'll just flick through it and give you an idea of what's inside. It tells you basically the full history of the aircraft in a much more detailed and in-depth way than Wingnut Wings does. Instead of a potted history, it gives you chapter and verse. Shows you on the production line at the Hawker factory. Harry Hawker, maybe jumping ahead there. I just saw the words Harry Hawker. Anyway, talking about the installation of machine guns here. I like the way they have the Sopwith company's name on the back of the tail. It's quite interesting, a bit like a car, you know, a badge. And then you've got lots and lots of photographs, obviously, brilliant references showing you, gives you an idea about colours, fixtures and fittings on the aircraft, how they appeared at certain different times, you know, what they were like when they were sort of in the factory versus when they were actually put into service, and the changes that were made in the field. Obviously here we've got a captured one, the Germans have got their hands on one. And then various personalisation markings, obviously that's a pilot's called himself Dusty 2, naming the aircraft, and so on and so forth, you know. So as you flick through it sort of shows a lot of in the field lineups, squadrons. Then we've also got, and this is where it gets really useful, almost blueprint standard details of the fuselage sections and how they relate to each other, how the instruments should look, the different types of air screw, propeller. Some fantastic detail. I mean, this is virtually a blueprint of the aircraft, so it's much more detail than you get in the instructions, even though Wingnut Wings are exceptional, or in a magazine, or in it, you know, in your typical run-of-the-mill sort of straightforward World War One aviation books. It's a very specific sort of reference tool. Absolutely brilliant. Pages and pages and pages of images, all different markings. Gives you lots of ideas for your colour schemes and the different colour call-outs that you might need. Some very fine detail about things like the rigging, which you wouldn't normally get to see. How the actual wires are connected and where they join, what sort of fittings they have. Just incredible. Static head pressure, things like anemometers. Then you've got the instruments here. And this shows it on the trestles. Reeling up of the fuselage. Look at that. That's incredible. hand pump for the petrol tank, pressurisation tank, machine gun fittings, locations of the struts and supports, braces, the main controls in the cockpit here. Look at that. Very, very helpful stuff. Fuselage detail, wing detail, where the actual struts go in, where the rigging, how it actually fits through the holes. So the guide, they call them fair leads. This is kind of a guide tube. Ailerons, elevators. This is all stuff that you wouldn't, obviously you can't expect Wings or anybody else to put this much detail in. This is really, absolutely, it's kind of meat and drink, isn't it, if you want to build a really nice detailed edition of the kit. And in the case of the Wings kits, they merit that, don't they? They're so nice, you know. You want to make a really good job of it. These, you know, you can get these for all sorts of aircraft. World War One, there's similar, if not the same manufacturer. There's plenty of reference books for World War Two aircraft and beyond. And this is when, you know, you notice that some modelers, when you see these finished examples, and you think, wow, that's incredible, you know. And these guys have almost certainly gone to some additional reference material. Now, you don't have to buy a specific book like that. It depends on how deep you want to go, I suppose. But that is very nice. It goes in my triplane beautifully, has to be said. And that just needs to be popped there. And then popped somewhere else. Over there. There we go, somewhere safe. Right, now then. All sorts of reference materials that we can consider. I have got a stack of them here. First of all, we'll come back to the Harrier toward the end, talk about it a bit more, because I have some questions. I want to ask the viewers, who may know themselves better than I, a couple of things. Anyway, I think I've shown these before in one of my previous Falklands War and Harrier review vid. Just two. I've actually got another one on the way. This is the Roland White, the sort of general Falklands War Harrier encompassing book, which is quite a thick one. How many pages has it got? It's quite 400 or 500, I think. That's all right. Yeah, but nearly 500 pages almost. I've also got this one. It's a bit slightly older book from 2013. This is Jonathan Clancy. It's just about the Harrier range, full stop. You know, so it's a great resource for finding out all about the Harrier, how it came about, what the demand was, obviously what its roles were, many different roles it carried out. Falklands, Afghanistan, US Marines, etc., etc. Indian Navy, the Spanish Navy as well, I think, and the Spanish Air Force. Yeah, quite a successful aircraft commercially, of course, because it was unique. And this goes into all that detail. It talks about the Falklands War, of course, and various other things. A really good book, though. General resource on the Harrier. No matter which version you're building, recommend that one. Then I've got another one coming. I mentioned Dave Morgan's Hostile Skies. Dave Morgan was operating, whereas Sharkey Ward's book, which was around here somewhere, there it is, sorry, there's the third one I missed, which is the famous one, of course, because it's quite controversial. Sharkey Ward was this very strong advocate of the Harrier, thought they were underutilising it, didn't feel that the Royal Navy understood it properly, and he wanted to use this to its maximum, and he did, along with his colleagues, and he was very much pushing its cause. And trying to explain to the Admiralty and the lead, the flag of the task force, Rear Admiral Sir Sandy Woodward and others, that this really was the fighter. Yeah, it wasn't designed. It could do ground attack roles, of course it could, because it's a variant of the Harrier, but it was at its best as a fighter, and he wanted these to be. Defeating the Argentine Air Force, who were very good, and we know this, didn't have the greatest aircraft, weren't the most modern, but were very, very well piloted. Maybe lacked experience in some cases, but their ability to fly those planes was second to none, and it needed, considering we had a very limited resource, we only had just over 20 planes, which is nothing. They had 10 times as many planes. So he wanted to knock out the Argentine Air Force before they got to their targets, whereas the Admiralty seemed to want to knock them out afterwards, which is strange. It's the Battle of Britain scenario again, where the Big Wing and Lee, Trafford, Mallory wanted to, you know, knock out the Germans en masse, but after they'd already completed their mission, which kind of defeats the object a little bit. Anyway, I've talked about that already. That's a very good book. Dave Morgan's book, Sharkey Ward here, Nigel Ward, he was operating on the HMS Invincible, 801 Squadron, and Dave Morgan was he 800 or 809? I always get it wrong. I think it was 800 Squadron, and he was on the Hermes, and he also got, I think, 3 kills. I think they both got 3 kills each, so they're both kind of aces basically in the Falklands. And I haven't read that yet, but I have seen his interview where he talks about the book in detail, and there's some remarkable stories. But anyway, getting back to the point of the video today is really to talk about, you know, the depth of information that you can glean from these books, details, you know, markings, individual personalizations, lots of things that are not in the instructions on the kit, you know, to do weathering, to do marking changes and make them perhaps a little bit more obvious, because they were in the Falklands. Sharkey Ward, he had 006 aircraft, and then he changed. He can't remember the one he had before.
Hi Pearly, disconnected.
Sorry, that's my Bose speaker system. But he was, I think he was 000, and then he became 006. Anyway, I can't remember all the details, but he changed the number and things like that. You can see on some of these that the markings have been changed, and you get that, you pick that up when you get these books, so very useful. So that's the sort of reference books in terms of worth a damn good read on a cold, wet night in the winter like we have now. Then we've got some more specific stuff to the kits themselves, so cut to the 2 specifics later. We'll talk about magazines a bit. I was watching a forum, a live show a few months ago, where people were debating are magazines worth buying, you know. And I was amazed that there was a very big wave of negativity against magazines, and I thought, everybody was saying, we have this generational thing going on, I think, where people talk about research, oh, you just go on the internet. Yes, but the problem with this is with the internet is it's such a blunt instrument. You go on, you search Harrier or Sea Harrier, and it throws up every version of the Sea Harrier. Okay, so then you put in Falklands or even 1982 Sea Harrier Falklands, and it still throws up a load of garbage, which if you don't know the difference, you're going to get yourself into trouble. Now, a lot of us have got some prior knowledge, of course, but it's very easy to get led astray. Look what happened with that one I just showed you, and he was a very experienced modeller who did a beautiful piece of work on that whole Sea Harrier and the diorama. His workmanship was absolutely second to none. But he didn't spot, probably because maybe he looked at the wrong photo, I don't know, but he didn't spot or even suspect. I mean, I smelt a rat as soon as I saw there were 2 in there, and I thought, we need to know. And I need to do independent research, yeah, asking my friend there from the forum who knows, because he worked on these aircraft. But it's always worth, you know, be suspicious, don't assume that the instructions are right. We have had lots of instructions that are just total nonsense. What was the one I built recently that was, the instructions were rubbish. Well, we had some faults in the MiG-25, but it's quite common that the instructions make mistakes, you know, and if you don't know, because you haven't got anything else to compare it to, you'll slavishly follow them, and you'll end up with a kit that is wrong. I mean, that chap, I'm not criticising this poor guy, because I saw it and I thought, I realised that I didn't realise straight away. I saved those photos and the article about his build, and I thought, what a beautiful piece of work. I've got to keep this. I've got to be at least close to this. And then I realised, I thought, no, he's got the wrong wing. It's completely wrong. It's not the right wing for the Sea Harrier from the Falklands. And it must be devastating when you realise that. And that's why we need to do more research. Don't rely on the internet, because it will not give you the depth and breadth of research. All you're getting is a page, you know, you need to cross-reference that with other things. So, I do like magazines. I don't buy them, you know, willy-nilly. I don't buy them every week, every month. But I will, if I see one that's a kit that's in my stash, or that I know I'm going to get, or likely to get, then I go for it. So obviously here we've got the Lightning, and this is the Tamiya magazine, so they would have it in, wouldn't they? But let's just zoom in here and you can have a little look at this. There's some really, really excellent detail here. I mean, look at the workmanship here. Who is this? Is this Chris Warchop or is this Marcus Nichols? I think it's one of them. It's Marcus Nichols. Yes, I was right. But look at this, you know, and you get some of the best modellers in the world. It's all very well having photographs of the real aircraft, but when you look at other modellers' work, I'm not suggesting for a minute you copy them, but you will gain ideas, and you will, not necessarily to do the same thing, but just open your mind a little to the possibilities, what you can do with a specific kit. You know, I mean, look at what he's done here. He's had to play around, he's put seat belts in, he's got some aftermarket, what's he got? Nano aviation seat harnesses used in the Lightning cockpit. Well, they look really good, I've got to say. He's got some photo etch, he's been modifying the intakes. It's got a decal as the mesh, which actually looks surprisingly effective, it has to be said, as long as you don't overspray it, of course. That's very good. But look at the depth I've got into. Now, I got some ideas from this, so I got myself this. Here's a hot tip for you if you're going to build the Lightning. You want to get yourself some of these beautiful turned brass Browning 50 cal machine gun barrels. Look at those. Those are absolutely brilliant, and they're from Aber. But I think you need to get 2 packs, because I have a feeling that, I'm trying to remember what the reason was. Oh, it says here, there you go, they look fantastic, they must have this model, but you'll need to purchase 2 packs, because basically in a pack there's only enough for 2 and you need 4. But look at the final result of that, isn't that wonderful? Absolutely superb. So again, he's talking about other things here, like using he's using a mottled pattern stencil, so mottling, which is quite good. Lots and lots of things that, you know, without seeing this, probably wouldn't have thought about it. So I might apply 1 or 2, not all of them, but some of these techniques I might have a go at. And it just, you know, it just gives you more ideas, doesn't it? And there's the finished product. Now this is just one magazine, and that's Tamiya's own. If I'm perfectly honest with you, that review there, and it goes into a lot more detail than they usually used to do. So that's very good. Then we've got the really upmarket stuff, Manga, which is very expensive. What is it? Nearly £7 in the UK. It's quite an expensive magazine. But again, the beauty of this magazine is it's pretty much advert free. And so you are paying for the magazine in its entirety. You're not getting a load of adverts. There is 1 or 2, but it's mainly their subscription, stuff like that. But again, look at this. You're going to see some absolutely world-class examples of models here. Let's check this one out. Now I'm guessing that these guys have actually done this themselves, but they haven't made it and then maybe got somebody else to paint it for them. Do you know who I mean? Somebody that's from the south, the south of the equator, you know, from the Antipodes. No names, no pack drill here. But anyway, moving on swiftly before I get sued. You're going to see a beautiful level of workmanship with these guys, and it's just, I know it's an expensive magazine at £7, but you've got a reference there. It's beautifully printed. You know, you've got something that you can keep as a kind of a souvenir. And as I've done, I bought this. How many years ago was this? It's about 3 or 4 years old, I think now. And there's lots of things they've done here. They've added wiring, lots of ideas that are not in your kit. It just stimulates your imagination to try to strive, go the extra mile a little bit more. I mean, look at that interior this guy's done. This is absolutely stellar. Let me just get you a better shot of this. Look at that. Look at the wiring detail. Well, that doesn't come in the kit, I can tell you here. Look at this. See that? And there's a rear view of it, so you can see it even better. That's just epic. Hard to know what to say really, except that I'm not going to be as good as that. But it's worth a try, you know, and they recommend techniques, they tell you which paints to use and so on and so forth. And it goes into great detail, which you don't really get when you look on the internet. You know, you very seldom get that. Yes, there's tutorials and things like that for, you know, on YouTube, but It won't be as specific to the actual what you're building as this will be. And this is a step-by-step how to build to the optimal. And then of course at the end you end up with something absolutely phenomenal. And there we go. As you can see, that is just outstanding. Absolutely superb work. And there we go. But anyway, that's just to give you an idea. There's a couple. I've got lots more. We'll go through them all, of course. But we've got a whole load of Tomcat ones, which I'll talk about in a second. And you can get if you get them like myself, you can easily get carried away and end up buying stacks of these books and mags. So I've got here Bombcat, which is actually the wrong one for the one I've got, because this is more the later F-14s. But I just thought it'd be nice to have, you know. Still shows a lot of Tomcats, but I have to be careful not to take this too literally, because this is really for the D model, so ignore that. But this one is for mine. You've got the Nimitz Black Ace, building the F-14A Tomcat. This of course is Model Airplane International, and again it goes into phenomenal detail, and it's a step-by-step build guide. Now for some reason there was no book available for this particular kit, which I was surprised actually, how to build Tamiyar's Tomcat F-14A from the usual people, Brett Green, etc. And I don't know why that was, because they did it for the Spitfire, but they didn't do it for this. I don't know whether they didn't build one, I'm not sure, but it seems very odd, because it's quite out of character, and that really is worthy of a step-by-step guide. Anyway, it's here, we've got it here, so it doesn't matter. And again, shows you masking and how to get your, you know, this is helpful, especially if you're not used to doing a lot of masking and you need a bit of guidance. You can't have too much information, you know. Read this stuff, don't just look at the pictures. But they make it light reading, because it's only, you know, a picture with a few comments below, so it's not difficult to follow at all. It's exactly what you want. This is perfect for me when I do mine. So I'm going to be reading this stuff up the next few weeks, you know, well, months perhaps. So you got that one, you got Illustrated Aircraft Modeler, another F-14A, same again, you know, step-by-step guide. So you know, you're not restricted to to any one brand of magazine. You know, there's a whole wide variety. Was that a lady in the bath? Was that my imagination? It was a lady in the bath. Oh. Wow, steel belts for seat belts, etc. Is it? Steel belts. Anyway, moving on. I'm in trouble with the wife. She sees me looking at that stuff. I'm already in trouble with the beard. She thinks I look like Mr. Dunwoody from the Oneidian Line drama series. Now, of course, a lot of you won't know what the hell I'm talking about. This was a BBC drama series from the 1970s. It ran from 1971 to 79, I think. So 8-9 years. And it was about this shipping line owner. And Mr. Dunwoody was his lawyer or accountant or something, I forget. But he had a very similar style of beard. Anyway, I digress. Here we've got the, again, Tomcat F-14A, and again, exactly how to... This focuses more on the construction, and then it gets into the painting later. Absolutely phenomenal. Really, really good. Although it seems to go into a lot of detail in the sort of mid-build, and it sort of jumps to the end, strangely, that one. Anyway, don't need to look at them all, but you get the idea. Very, very useful reference magazines. And as I say, what you should do, I think, if you've got things and you're thinking, I'll definitely build that in the next year or two, and you mean to, as I am with these, just if you see a magazine where somebody's done a really nice example, just pick one up, because you won't regret it. You've got that reference then for the future. Alright, I'm going to pop that there, and then we're going to look at some more very, very super specific focused books. Now I said there was no how to build like we have with the, you know, the Tamiyar 30-second kits like the Corsair Spitfire, the Mosquito, etc. And they do such a... This is Brett Green with Chris Woolchop, his partner in crime, painter in time, partner in crime. I mean, did I say painter in time? Sorry, it was a slip of the tongue. Anyway, you can see here that it starts off with really good references. Sorry. good references where you start with a history of the aircraft, photographs of the background, its concept, manufacture. Really nice this. So in this you get, it's like a book, but it's a bit more cheaper and a bit more handleable than a big book. So you get internal detail about the cockpit, how the engines look, you know. It's all there really that you need. And then they always do a proper walk through the sprues. It's like a written proper review this. Everything's shown, the sprues, clear parts, decals, and then they get into it step by step. And they show some proper detail. And they do it in various different variants. So you get to see different ways of approaching it. The detail is just incredible, you know. I mean, this is going to be the Bible, this one for me, when I do the Mosquito, for sure. And you know, look at this, absolutely incredible. That showing the machine guns. Astonishing. It's actually 20mm cannon, isn't it? That go underneath. Sorry, not the machine guns in the nose. So these are cannons that go under the nose. Absolutely superb detail, and it shows the actual installation. And it clearly shows. I mean, it looks like the real aircraft. This. It doesn't look like a model at all, does it? So this is what it's all about. It really is. Getting a clear three-dimensional understanding about where everything goes, how it should look, different options, yeah. Metal finish Mosquito, silver finish. I say metal finish, it's just sprayed silver because it's obviously a wooden aircraft, but anyway. It's not a raw metal finish like they are on other aircraft. And then Amiens Raider, this is probably the one I'm going to have. Yeah, that's Percy Pickard's aircraft. In fact, that's not Percy Pickard's aircraft, is it? F. Freddy. Yes, it is. Yeah. Okay, so they're giving it a silver undercoat. Look at the way that they go at it, you know. It's a wonderful book. I really like looking at these. They're so enjoyable to read. Glorious photos that are in beautiful colours, so sharp. Probably not doing justice to them, am I? Here we go. Look at that. Stunning work, you know, stunning work. And then you've got, you know, the finished article. Look at this. Beautiful. All in one book. Created by, in this case, you know, one of the world's best builders and his painter. Anyway, now I said there was no version of that for the F-14, and there isn't in that series. However, we have got a chap here in America who has done just that. Obviously saw a gap in the market. It's a little bit of a homemade starter, but it's nonetheless you know, effective or substantial anyway. That's quite a thick book, this. Now it doesn't have the colour photos in it. It's based on the diagrams and the instructions. But I can tell you that this is really, really good. It's almost like a... We've got black and white photos, but it's almost like an engineer's. So he's obviously an engineer because he worked in the aviation industry, and you can tell it's done by an engineer. This is like an engineering manual almost. So this is a chap called Glenn Hoover, and I have to say that if you're going to build one of these, I would strongly recommend you get this, because I've never heard or seen his work before, and I was much impressed. And again, he goes through it from the very beginning, and he talks about Aftermarket that you can buy. The various ones that he would recommend. It shows you every sprue by sprue. Would have been nice if you could have got it done in colour, but you have to understand that if you're producing something like this, you know, how many would you sell these books? Yeah, you might sell 500, 600, 1,000 worldwide at a stretch. I don't know. But he really tells you exactly what to do. He gives you all sorts of tips, where to put things, how to paint them. Some of it is diagrams taken from the instructions, and some of it's his own. And this is a valuable resource. You know, things like the wiring and the piping in the cockpit. Very, very cleverly done. things that you should grind down, and he's very much guiding you how to use the aftermarket. And this is, I think this is invaluable. Here's one of my little beefs, if you like. When you get the Edward aftermarket, I'm not picking on Edward, this is just general. Most aftermarket that I've seen hasn't been very good at the explanation of things. There was one that was very exceptional. Was it I think it was the Lightning. There was an American company from Texas, and I can't remember their name, and they did an aftermarket resin ejection seat, and they had this instruction book which was absolutely brilliant. Clearly the best I've ever seen. But anyway, you don't normally get that, and I find Edwards quite hard to follow, and I don't like their style of instruction. Not enough words of explanation. Well, this cures that problem. Have a look at this. Now, he tells you exactly how to use your photo etch, how to bend it, where to put it, the absolute exact locations. See how to bend it here, there, bending your photo etch, where to locate it. He really goes to town on the fine detail that you don't really get very clearly in those aftermarket kits. And it's all written, it's not just a diagram, it's all written out in the correct sequence. He sequences everything by number. So this is an absolutely stunning piece of work. I mean, this is almost like the work of a lifetime. It's so detailed, it goes on for so many. How many pages have we got? 200 pages? Okay, well it's only 130 pages. It feels more than that. It's quite a thick paper, but he goes into absolute extreme detail, you can say. And he does use some of the images from the Edward guide, and then there are some that he's kind of added himself. Look at this, the burner rings here. Burner rings for your engine. Absolutely amazing. So, I'm not sure if he's done others. I need to do more research on this chap, but I've got to say, from what I've seen, it's a Bible to build this model, really. A Bible. Look at this. It breaks down into little bite-sized sort of lessons for each different component, so you're not sort of over-blinded by what's on the page. You just focus on it one step at a time. There's your pilots, putting your guys in, how to build up your canopy. It's tempting, having seen this, it's very tempting to get that, and it might be a slight exaggeration, but you're almost tempted to throw the instructions in the bin, really, but perhaps not. But you're certainly going to use that a lot, I think, a lot, because it's just so clear. And it's the way he's broken it down into small, tiny steps, and they're in number sequence, and he tells you do it in this sequence because it'll be much easier. So there's a lot of work there in terms of what he's done, and it looks quite heavy, but actually what it's doing is just breaking it down into single steps. A single step, one step at a time. It says on the back here that he's a retired systems engineer, well, you can tell. Spent 35 years with the US Aerospace and Defence Company, probably Grumman, I'm guessing, but anyway. And he's a scale modeller with the Delaware IPMS region. So he's brought all of his skill as an engineer together to make modelling easier for the rest of us. That is remarkable. I mean, it lacks the glamour and the colour photographs. Yes, it does. But as an instructional manual for building your kit, you want to get one of those. And then finally, at the very sort of Rolls-Royce end of the market, if you will, Mr. Spencer Pollard, one of the finest models in the UK, in my view. He did this, I've shown it once before actually. He did this for the Tornado GR4 from Italeri. He produced a book, and this book basically details all the same sort of thing, but it's a much more sort of premium visual treat, if you like. So we've got a lovely little postcard here, which is very nice. It literally is a postcard. We also have, proving how glamorous it is, we also have a poster with 617 Squadron's motif, Après moi, le déluge, after me the flood. And it's got the finished kit that he produced, which was beautiful, quite frankly. Just right, I thought. You see the pictures. Just the right amount of weathering, not too crazy, but very lived in looking Tornado GR4. Absolute stunner, beautiful work. So here's the book. Now he has, this is kind of somewhere between these two styles that we've just been talking about, because this is slightly homemade in terms of, but it's been to professional printers, but it's just the way they've gone about it. I think it's been digitally printed. It's perfect bound though, so it's quite high quality, and then you've got these lovely proper images inside, and we get the history of the Tornado, the previous kits that came before it, including the good old MRCA from Airfix. Do you remember that, folks? Let's just zoom you right in on this one. The MRCA multi-role combat aircraft, Airfix's original 1975 kit, which I had at the time. One thing I will say for it, it wasn't the best shaped or anything, but it had a lot of weapons, which when you're 10 or thereabouts, it's pretty cool. Anyway, it goes through, again, it's a bit of a sprue tour, and he sort of gives us a summary about the visuals, kind of a review, a little like an inbox review. So it's almost a written version of what I did and others have done. And then he talks about the assembly and all the sort of challenges and tips that he brings to the party, how to get the most out of it, where you're going to have some difficulties, where you're going to find things with options that you need to consider perhaps beforehand. And then we talked about the swinging weapons system for the swing wing affair, obviously the weapons pivot. He wasn't really impressed by this, and he decided just to glue them fixed because he didn't want to have it in multiple positions. Anyway, there's lots and lots of images here, and this is a UK produced book, which is nice. You know, it's got some lovely illustrations, which I'm not really showing you. Let's show you properly. Nice illustrations of the actual aircraft, painting ideas, different demarcations and schemes, techniques for painting which he'd recommend. It shows him doing lots of masking up there. And look at the effect he gets on the tail. He gets like a multiple, quite a lot of, he did a lot of pre-shading obviously, but he's got a very nice subtle effect on this aircraft. It's weathered, but it's subtly weathered. Look at the different highlighted panels here. You can see certain panels look like they've been replaced, which is nice. Same here, you can see it in a bit more detail there. And then he goes on to the sort of the later stages, weathering, and he does this so beautifully, to be honest. I think he's using oils, yeah. Panel line wash, raw umber oil paints. There you go. And the thing is, you just use terps to remove that, and if you get it wrong, you can just take it off. Always put your clear coat down first, though, folks. Otherwise, you'll never get it off. It'll just bond immediately. Anyway, the tail, of course, on the Tornado. This is quite interesting because on the Tornado we have these reverse thruster buckets, so you always end up with this blackened-looking tail, like so. And he's got that down to a fine art. It's not quite as crazy as it probably looks in that photo when you see the final effect, but there's a real one there which gives you the reference to aim for. And again, some really nice work here. And the metallic finishes he's got around those thrust reverser buckets and the engines themselves, and then the weapons, laser guided bombs, etc. Yeah, he says the kit includes these, but they weren't quite correct for the RAF munitions. has made some minor changes, especially on the heads. I mean, he's a champion amongst modellers in my view. This guy, no question about that. I always enjoy looking at his work, and he's a big fan of Francois Villinden, of course, the 1960s and 70s modeller who is famous for his World War II, especially German style, German armour, that kind of thing, and I think he's learned from their style. Look at the Scud Hunters here, some of the actual markings. He's trying to give you ideas here for different options. They're all tribute acts, if you like, to the original Scud Hunters from the Gulf War. But anyway, there we go. And he also talks about the 1/48th version as well, which is the Revel version. Yeah, very nice publication, it has to be said. Now that one is a bit tricky to get hold of. I think when he sold it to me, it was a very limited run, and it was about £35 or thereabouts. But it was a special edition because it came with this poster and the postcard. Very nice little items to have, to be honest. And if I don't make that particular kit, which I haven't decided yet, if I'm honest, because it's big. It's a big, really big model, so it may not find a home in my cabinet. It may get sold on. So if I do sell it on, I put this with it, that's going to make it quite attractive to any buyer, because you're getting something a little bit extra. And if I can get it back in the bag, which is always a challenge, I have a chance. Here we go. We have it. We have it. So obviously that's not your run-of-the-mill thing that you normally pick up in WH Smith's, but that's an example of keep your eyes open for something that's a bit unique, something a bit special, because there's always things to consider. Now, before I go, at the other end of the spectrum, I mean, some of these are quite expensive. Here's something that wasn't very expensive. I'm getting this Sea Harrier, and I've got the Harrier GR3 from Kinetic. So I wanted some reference material. Now I picked this up for £3.99p from World of Books on eBay. And do you know what? That's probably the best £4 I've ever spent this. It's got the oldie worldy book smell, but it's got everything in it. It's got the whole history of the Harrier, the early Harriers. I think this was produced in the 80s, this book. Just check that actually. What does it say? Printed in Spain, okay. 84, okay, so I was right. And it's basically the history of the Harrier, you know, its genesis, its concept. It goes into what the competitors were, who the designers were, the massive technical challenges that getting a vertical short takeoff and landing aircraft that's going to be a jet fighter into the air would be. Now remember that this was probably one of the greatest technical British achievements in the aircraft industry because of what it could do, you know. I mean, I don't need to sort of explain it to people, it's just remarkable. It talks about the Russian Yak, which, yes, they did get it as well. It worked in a very similar way, but it was much less effective, couldn't carry virtually any payload, very unreliable, too big. Just a worse version of the Harrier, a lot worse really, you know. It's almost like they copied the Harrier's sort of front end and nozzle system and the wing, if you like, but they had this overly stretched out fuselage because they had a separate lift engine, and that made it super heavy, of course. So it's a bit more, the new F-35 Lightning is much more in concept similar to that idea. But the Harrier of its time was pure genius, you know. No, but don't let anybody ever convince you otherwise. If it wasn't brilliant, truly brilliant as a concept, the Americans would never have bought this, and they've used it a great deal. So the Spanish and the Indians and who else? Something I'm missing. Somebody else used them as well. Is it Spain? France? No, not France. Anyway, they have widely sold. I'm surprised they didn't sell more. And of course the Argentinians were offered the Harrier and the Sea Harrier back in about 1978, and they turned it down and went for the Mirage and the Skyhawk. What a mistake of a maker. And I'm sure they realised their error, sadly too late for them, after they invaded the Falklands, because this thing would pop up And it was the fact that it could hide. If it was being hunted, and if one was out of fuel or in trouble, it could hide. It could drop and land anywhere. Well, they couldn't do that. Once Port Stanley Runway was out of action for the Mirages, they had to go back to Argentina. So it gave them the Battle of Britain scenario. They could only be there for a very, very short time indeed. Harrier could dwell, and in an emergency, it could even be refueled by the British Army on the ground. They had refuelling vehicles, and they had these sort of emergency landing zones set up at places like Goose Green. Anyway, the fact is, it was a remarkable technical achievement. It tells you all about the Falklands conflict here. In fact, it's talking about the very issue I've just mentioned about the range of the limitations of the Argentine planes, because they had to go back home and they couldn't drop down and turn Goose Green into a petrol station. That wasn't an option for them. So even when they had control of it, they couldn't do that. So having this small, agile fighter was remarkable. It's interesting that Sharkey Ward in one of his interviews said that he thought that the Harrier, in real terms, the Sea Harrier, had an advantage of about 10-1 against the Argentinians, and of course that's the way it kind of proved, because we were outnumbered 10-1, so it had to have that advantage. And it's said that not a single one was ever shot down in air-to-air combat against another aircraft. They were only shot down from, I think a Roland missile shot one down, another one shot down by gunfire, and the other 2 or 3 all had accidents. One ran out of fuel and 2 collided. So accidents apart, and ground fire apart, the Argentinians and their much faster aircraft never got anywhere near shooting one of these down. So clearly, had they had the Harrier would have been the perfect aircraft for the Argentinians on the Falklands, because they would have then had the home advantage, and it would have been really difficult for the British to retake the island. Very, very difficult, I think. But there we go. Sometimes, when you've got governments procuring technology, they don't always make the right choice. In fact, they often don't. I'm not sure we've made the right choice buying the F-35, but I'm not going to get started on that. I personally think it's not the right aircraft for the Royal Navy. I can see why they went for it. I understand it, but I think they should have updated the Harrier. I just think it was updatable. Yes, it's not going to be stealthy, but I'm not sure how important that is in the real world. Depends on who your adversary was. Nobody was stealthy in the Falklands conflict, and if you're not stealthy but you can drop down and stop and hide, which is what these could do, well, I'm not sure how stealthy you need to be. But anyway, I'm not trying to revise history or turn the clock back, but I really do think that they should have modernised the Harrier, a bit more performance, perhaps a bigger version of the engine, etc. I think it would still have had a place today, even if we only had a small number of them, perhaps 30 or 40, But there we go. It's actually number 007 there. That's Sharkey Ward's colleague. Does it say who the pilot is? It's one of his colleagues in 801 Squadron for sure. Anyway, this is a brilliant book. It's got, it's all in black and white, of course, the photos, but it just tells you everything, And of course, then the development of the AV-8A to the AV-8B by the US government. It was actually McDonnell Douglas that did it. I don't remember, but memory's gone in my head. I'm sure it was McDonnell Douglas. Yeah. McDonnell Douglas. So, I mean, they did a brilliant job with that as well, and because that really was the forerunner of the final Harrier, the GR9, sorry. My brain's going. Anyway, there we go. I think we've had enough talk today. Just a couple of things finally before I disappear. 2 things you haven't seen. One is just arrived, the zoom set from Edward for the Kinetic Sea Harrier FRS-1. So I thought you might like to have a little nosy at this. Here it is. And basically it's the cockpit set, essentially. And it's really rather nice, actually. Look at this. So this is just going to, lift the cockpit. You've got all the side panels here for the pilot. Quite a lot of detail there that you don't get in the kit. And the instrumentation here. There's the ejection pulls, and you've got seat belts, and the seat top, I think that is. Seat top, seat rear. Just a little bit of fine detail. Now, I'm going to end with a question today. It's time for me to ask the questions, and maybe some of you can provide the answers. What's the best paint to use on this Sea Harrier then? Because I've got two options at the moment. Well, I've got more than two if I want to mix and match, but I've got Mr. Colour Aqueous, which I quite like. I like water-based acrylic. So we've got the water-based acrylic here, and it's the H416, which is black grey, which, ignoring names, I can tell you is pretty much the right colour. It's pretty damn close to being right for the what do they call it, RAF Extra Dark Sea Grey, which we actually have from Alclad. Now, I'm not sure about the Alclad. This is why I'm looking to see if you can advise me. So here we've got the Alclad. Oops. Get it right. There we go. There we are. So we've got this one. I'm just not sure. It's enamel, isn't it? And I'm not sure about using the old enamels. It is part of a specific set for the Sea Harrier, so it is definitely the right shade. Just wonder what other people thought. Should I use that? Should I use this? I know Hitaka and others do their own grade. What would people recommend as the extra dark sea grey for the Sea Harrier? I'm open to ideas, haven't made my mind up on this, so answers on a postcard or in the comments below. Thank you very much. Anyway, enough from me today. I think we've covered everything. Very interesting to just think about, you know, as I showed at the beginning, don't put your eggs in one basket with research. Check it out, because you may come a cropper as that poor chap has done. I don't know if he even knows that he didn't use the right wing. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Don't need to upset anybody by pointing out a little mistake. It's not a major deal at the end of the day, is it? And it still looks like a Sea Harrier, but it isn't right, and it's not helped by these manufacturers not being very clear. So do not trust your instructions, cross-reference, get yourself a book, get yourself a magazine. Yes, have a look at some photos on the net. You've seen the photos that I did. Always useful to do that. But do not trust one source, because it'll bite you in the backside in the end. And it's always worth checking everything within reason. Anyway, thanks a lot. Hope you found it interesting today. Tried to do something a bit different. Hope that was of some sort of interest. Thank you for watching. Please give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, don't forget to do so. And if you have, ding that notification bell so you get an early warning of the next video. Nice and soon, as soon as it's uploaded. And in the meantime, I hope to have something new and exciting coming through in the not too distant future. Please stay tuned. In the meantime, look after yourselves. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.